the master give you something, boy, you take it. And it's a name, and it's a good damn name, and it's Toby, and it's gonna be yours to the day you die.
Roam this whole world over. Many murders
and tell me your name.
in
What's your name, boy?
shame.
My name is...
No man's feet are not been under. What's my name?
Come on. Your name's Toby. Say your name. Come on, boy.
I've been chained.
Come on. Say it.
Whipped and beaten. Slavery
What's your name?
My only thing. Even my soul.
Come on, nigga.
The nation's plunder.
Say it again so they all can hear you. Say it. Come on now.
What's my
Don't
name?
be bashful. Say your name. Toby's your name, boy. Say it.
What's my name? Who could care for none doth stand with me? I alone have to bear my grief and misery. Comes the day my God is tired. The way the heathen, the way they use his name, and he will tear my bonds asunder. Then you will hear when I proclaim, then you will hear when I proclaim, Israel, Israel. Israel is my name. Hallelujah.
My name is Cohane Michael Ben Levi of the Hebrew family of Guyana. The aim of these dissertations is to cause the true house of Israel, who have been without knowledge of themselves for countless generations, and who are now being awakened by the God of the universe, to better serve our Creator. It is our hope that by reacquainting this awakening black nation with their laws and former history, it will hasten our return to our true identity, thereby acknowledging our ancient ancestors. This in turn will allow us to know our Father's God and prepare us to stand together to meet the terrible day of the Creator that he is now readying for all mankind. May he cause all your minds and hearts to understand.
Shabbat Shalom Lakim.
I hope and pray that the Most High will comfort all of the families who are mourning, and that the Holy One of Israel will heal all of those who are facing health challenges. We give thanks to the Holy One of Israel, the maker of heaven and earth, for life and for the lives of each and every one of us. Certainly for another opportunity to speak to you, it's both an honor and a pleasure. For over 400 years, we former African slaves in the Western Hemisphere have been told that nobody knows who we are. We've been mixed up, they say, with too many different tribes. We've been traded and sold and divided so many times that our history is unknown, as well as our language. Today, we want to let you know these are lies. Lies upon lies upon lies, becoming a great deception and a conspiracy on the planet. Today, suddenly, their ancestry search businesses and data finding companies and organizations all over the internet, claiming they have found your genealogy linked to your ancestors. And they claim that these are factual truths. I would like us to consider that there are flaws in their research. It is inaccurate. Is it accurate is what we should ask, who have been former slaves. Is it trustworthy to accept this data from those who prior to this time never told us a word about who we are, where we came from? Are these people who've oppressed us and given us now all of a sudden this information for $250, sometimes more or less? And should we trust them? Is their information thorough, complete, and comprehensive? There are many Black people who are undoubtedly ascendants, because we want to start thinking about ourselves as ascending rather than descending, going down, but rising up from our ancestors' predicament. We are ascendants of African stock, and many of us have been told through these studies that we are Greek. Sometimes I know some who said they were Irish Black people. German were told Black people told they were from Germany through these and other, I consider, ridiculous findings that they have European ancestry. In humor, today, as our title is Smile, Laugh Out Loud, it's Black History Month, continuation of last week's program. I'd like us to get a little humor about a ridiculous foot and toe method of determining a person's genealogy. Let's have a good laugh.
Welcome to the Ancestral Findings Podcast. This is episode 227. Have you ever heard of foot shape genealogy? It is a concept out of the 19th century that still has some adherents today. It is based on the belief that the shape of your foot can tell you one of 5 ancient ethnic groups to which your ancestors belonged. Join me today as I talk about this wild and crazy method. Researching your genealogy is much easier today than in the past. With online records and digitized copies of just about any document ever created, it is possible to trace a large part of your family tree without even leaving your house. However, using records and family lore is not the only method people have used in the past to trace their family trees. In the past, there was a theory that one could determine their ancestry via the shape of their feet. In fact, some people today still believe this method. While the foot shape method is questionable in its accuracy, the way it is used to supposedly determine one's ancestry is fascinating. If you have exhausted all genealogical resources and want some extra ideas on how to trace your ancestry, foot shape may not give you an accurate result, but it will definitely give you some entertainment. Here is what you need to know about it. The exact term for this particular type of genealogy is foot and toe ancestry. The premise is that by examining the shape of your feet, you can hazard a pretty accurate guess as to where your most ancient ancestors originated. Foot and toe ancestry is based on 5 basic foot shapes: Celtic, Greek, Egyptian, Germanic, and Roman. Each foot type has a unique design to it, known as the outline of the foot, and the toe lengths are also particular to each foot type. Among the foot types, the Celtic foot type is the most complex and unusual. With Celtic feet, the foot itself is quite large, but the big toe is short. The second toe, the one right next to the big toe, is exceptionally long, and the other toes are smaller, getting progressively smaller until they end in a tiny pinky toe. The Celtic foot is a bit of a combination of Greek and German foot types, particularly with the exceptionally long second toe, which is also a hallmark of the German foot type. Do your feet and toes look Celtic? Try researching an unknown branch of your family tree if you don't know of any Celtic background, and see if you come up with any Celtic ancestors. Or,
No, I didn't come up with any Celtic ancestors. I hope you didn't either, because this is all ridiculous. And of course, we all should realize that you're not included in that, because they just have Egyptians. What about all the other people from the continent? Whereas they have 3 or 4 choices for European. You can be Greek, you can be German, and Celtic and all of that. So again, just want to get us to think, because this program is designed as a truth-centered teaching. We want you to think as a people and even as a humanity. Let's look at some of the information presented by an African ancestry company, strictly dealing with the African understanding.
Trace your DNA, find your roots. Using the power of DNA and the most comprehensive database of indigenous African genetic sequences in existence, African Ancestry is the only company that can trace your ancestry back to a specific present-day African country and ethnic group of origin dating back more than 500 years ago. If the results are from another continent, that information will be provided. Here's how it works. We each carry in our DNA a series of indicators that provide information about our ancestry. This information is passed from generation to generation and can tell a profound story about where we come from and highlight our connections to modern-day Africa.
The key here is that we have to go further back than modern day Africa. That's what you need to know about most of these companies. They only give you your understanding about 500 years back and no further. Again, 500 years only is just not enough time for the indication of who we are, Africans that went into the Atlantic slave trade. And of course, modern history is not where the answers to our problem lie. They lie in ancient history and what we would call back then Eden, which was a name prior to the name Africa, named after Africanus. And so we want to know and understand the history prior to the Europeans' invasion of our territories. That's where we find the truth about ourselves. Blood is not the most important factor to determine ancestry. The ancestry research for colonial African slaves has unique circumstances, which must be taken into consideration. We were slaves hundreds of years before we became slaves via the Atlantic slave trade. A complete historical background must be determined. Earliest migration patterns, where did we move across the continent before arriving in West Africa. And all the people of West Africa say they came from the north and Northeast Africa, to be specific. They themselves say that. The experiences such as our linguistics, retention evidence, which we mentioned before, we still use words in our vocabulary all across Africa, the Caribbean, and the United States that say we have kept and held on to certain words. We mentioned copaceta last week and copacedir in Hebrew. Na, please, come na in the West Indies. And there are many, many more. I hope your minds are thinking in those regions that I've just mentioned. Many of us have traveled to Europe from the Caribbean and live in England today. And again, we must know our history. We're not British, even though we have British passports and we have British and American citizenship. That's not who we are. The experiences of our other activities, things that confirm, even other people have said who we are. Let's listen to one of these people, and there are thousands of them who know who we are, amongst the Arab world, the European world, amongst the East Indians themselves.
Hi, shalom, shalom from Israel. This is Ola, the daughter of Jethro. And I just heard that you black people that was stolen from Africa to America, that you don't know who you are, but you are the children of Yahweh, the children of Israel. And I'm telling you, you have to come back to your homeland, here to Zion, to Jerusalem, because us the Gentiles, we do need you. We need you to come and pray, because you are our saviors. You're the one that was chosen by Yahweh to live in this land, not the Jewish people, it's you. You were stolen from Africa, they deceived you, they told you that you are slaves, but you actually the children of Israel. And it's time just to come back. Come for your people, come back for us, come back for the whole Gentiles, because only you gonna save us. So please.
Only you can save us. Only you. Many of you out there, some know you, Israel, others don't. We have to elevate our righteousness. We have to ascend to a higher state of mind, of righteousness, of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of familyhood, to conceive nationhood. And so this is what our program is all about. And it's not to divide, but to unite humanity, especially beginning with our own people. If you don't know where you came from, you've heard it, and you won't understand where you are presently, know you have an understanding of where you're going. That's why we're considered, and we are, a lost people. We're lost in terms of our destiny, the path to living out our purpose as a people. I love many of those civil rights activists, and one among them is John Lewis. Too many to name. A great activist who left us some things to think about, and they're profound. I want all of our elders out there to think about this. I want our people to think about this in all humanity, especially our next generation of young youth. You have to understand what John Lewis said. If you see something, say something. If you see something wrong, speak up, stand up. Remember this too, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Again, we are thankful that God has not abandoned us on this journey. And this journey, throughout this journey, we're going to learn about where our journey began, what happened to us, how it happened, why it happened, when it happened, because that's what we need to know in order to find the answer to our particular and peculiar circumstances of being a lost people. We're in last week's program, and I hope many of you who didn't see it will go back and see all of our programs, because each program is another piece to the puzzle of who we are and what happened to us. We want to go and look at the understanding of the continent of Africa because we know in history class, that's where that statement that I mentioned to you earlier actually started. I was in a history class in the United States at City College, and it was called the Black Experience. And I took the class because naturally I wanted to get more information, one of the history courses that I was taking about the Black experience. And I asked the instructor this question after hearing her say she was an expert on the history and experience of Black people. Many of the students were terribly upset having a European make such a statement. So I asked, after having been blessed to be in a Shabbat Israel, and I mean, that was an institution. In fact, the greatest university that I ever went to was a Shabbat Israel. And so with that knowledge, I asked the teacher, I said, can you tell me, I've been sort of complex, and we as a people have been complex about who our ancestors are. And I would like you, since you're such an expert, to tell us where we came from and who we are as a people, because we really need to know that information. And she said, like most of them say, you know, you've heard it many times, nobody knows the answer to that question. You all have been mixed up, sold and divided many times, and that our history is unknown. And your language, you speak so many different languages over time that it's just impossible for anyone to answer that question. And so I begged to differ. And I raised my hand and said, no, I disagree with that statement. I know who we are. And so she said, as long as you can prove it with evidence from the library and what have you, you can do it. So I, of course, went to Schomburg Library, and I knew I've been doing my research with the Shabbat Israel and restoration of Israel, and I knew how to ask those questions. And so it became very interesting. So at this point, I would like us to look at a timeline, because I believe that we have to understand time. And usually Black people, they're not taught time in the right way. So I want you to look at the bottom of this screen. It says 1 AD or AD. You have to know that, in other words, if you get to that 2000, year 2000, it's going back to 1 AD, and you see JC up there. That's letting you know this from 1 to 2000. You could put 21 there if you like, and that will be where we are today. But let's look at the timeline, going backwards first, and then we'll come forward so that we can understand what happened to us as a people. I'm giving you this not only as a historian, but I'm using all the historical evidence that anyone can check. This is the history. Let's just take the 2000 to 1500 years. We know that in that period of time, slavery took place. You know, and it could be 1492, some people say 1611. I'm just saying, let's just do what we call in history about the time. Let's consider all of this about approximately in this framework of time. The Atlantic slave trade was the most horrific event in human history. It truly dehumanized an entire nation of people with sustained oppression through the course of generations. We've been oppressed for generations, and it's in our ruach. Many call it PTSD. And you know, we call it, again, post-traumatic slave syndrome disorder. And then we got just the regular post-traumatic slave syndrome. And anybody can have a bad experience from policemen shooting a person, being shot at. They never forget it. Firemen who went into a fire and they couldn't save the dog, and the dog died, and he couldn't get over that. He remembered it. Sometimes it's a human life that's lost, and it affects the person and affects their state of mind. Imagine for hundreds of years, what happened to us It's affecting every one of us in one way or another. But let's try to heal ourselves with understanding what happened, why it happened, where it happened, when it happened. The Atlantic slave trade began somewhere in that period we said that they've mentioned, but let's take the 1400s forward, even earlier if you want to, because I want you to know we've been slaves for hundreds of years before the Atlantic slave trade. Cohane Levi used to tell us we've been hand-me-down slaves, like an old garment that passed from one sibling to the next. The nations have passed us down from one society to the next, if you study our history. And with this timeline, I hope to do that for you. So let's look at in this 1400s that we know all of the slave trade took place in West Africa, but as often as people don't mention it, many Africans was enslaved by Islamic Arabs as well. So let's not put that to the side. Many of our brothers and sisters in Africa are Muslims because of that particular historical Islamic invasion into the continent. Now, let's look at some of the people that were taken during this period from West Africa. First on the list I'm giving you is a list of the top 10 tribes taken into slavery by the names that we had acquired through the migration from Northeast Africa, the wars that took place between us with the Hamitic seed and among ourselves, many switching to Islam and having diverse ways of life. It caused a lot of strife in Africa before the European got there. It's the history books that tell you what happened. That's why we came into Ham's territory and it wasn't a welcome. And we came in with a different culture, looked differently, act differently, ate differently, and it caused a problem. You come into somebody's land and influencing their population and make an impact that's diverse to their culture. We were fighting in Africa before the Europeans got there, and these are some of the reasons. The Shamba in the 18th and 19th century were one of the first tribes taken during that period. The Wolof, also of West Africa, their origin, they say, came from Northeast Africa, they say so. And they were warring constantly because many of them were called the Amaradan. And the Amaradan might mean that they were saying they were Dan, because if you know the word Amara and then Dan at the end was saying we're Dan, but they were practicing Islam. And so they too were taken one of the 10 tribes. They were probably one of the tribes of Israel by the new name that we had lost in the migration, because the Most High said he would make us a byword and a proverb. Then we have the Abram, the third group of those 10 nations, called the Akan. And we have the Akan that was located in Judah. That was one of the territories. They were also known as the Coromantee. These probably were definitely Judites because they were sent to Jamaica, and the Jamaican British hated them because they were the worst slaves to follow instructions that you could ever get. And you know how Jamaicans are. In fact, that's how they fought, got into the Maroons and got into the hills. They were not hard to conquer. They were difficult to conquer, them brothers in Jamaica. They didn't resist it. Every form. You have what you call right throughout the Guyanas, Maroons, and you have different, they call them the Yucca, up in Suriname. You got all these tribes that rebelled. They're still there to this day, practicing uncleanness of their wives. They have to separate from the East. Right today, because we've met the Juka, as I said, of Suriname, they've come, and some of them, you can't even go into their territories without permission today. They're still in existence, practicing some of the ways of Israel. Then we have the Fulani. We always spoke about the Fulani and the Shaba, we were taught. And I found out the Fulani was one of the most numerous, and they were spread all across the continent of Africa. Fulanis everywhere, north, east, south, and west. And you'll find, again, they're one of the strongest, largest tribes. Again, they have many hybrid kingdoms across Africa. That's why they know that they're all Fulani. And so again, we have to know Senegal, Mali, throughout all of these places, in Eden, the motherland, they call it Africa. That's where these tribes came from. The Mande, or Mandi, they are people, again, called the Mandika, the Mandingo. You've heard of those modern names that they've given them, but they were just one of the tribes of Israel that had lost its name. They were transported earlier than many of the other Africans. They came as early as the 1100s through the 1600s and the European continent. That's number 5. Number 6 is the Fon, called the people of Togo, southwest Nigeria. The Dahomey, we always spoke about them, and the Shab as well. They were called Hagar. Their marriages took place with the Yoruba, another populous tribe in what we know as Nigeria, West Africa. They married in with the Fon, and they formed one society in some places. The Bakongo of Angola, they converted to Christianity by the Portuguese, because remember, you had different people. Many of them are found in Brazil today. In fact, many people don't know this, but the South America have more slaves than North America. There are 10 million slaves, Black people in Brazil just alone. The Igbo settled early as 100 BCE. In other words, this tribe was known as Israelites in Africa very early. And today, they're one of the most prominent, and we know Igbos today tell you that they are Yisrael. Again, in Time magazine years ago, we had the cover, called them the Igbo, the Black Jews of Africa. Not Black Jews, the real Israelites of Africa. And of course, they wanted to make you think they were Jews, but you know there's a difference between Israelites and Jews. At least you should know that by this time. And number 10, the Mambundu. They were, again, sent to Haiti, St. Lucia, and of course, with all the mixing up, we have no way of telling who's where and what have you, but you can look at your characteristics. Genesis 49 help you to figure it out. Deuteronomy 33 tells you characteristics of the tribes, and you know in your fathers, your male side, because in Israel, you get your ancestry through your father's family. And so Judah in the United States, Levi, Shimon, Yissaschar, Zebulun, Reuven, you know what they knew? They knew how to put us together with the sons of Leah, Raquel, Zilpah, and Bilhah, because they knew you would get along better. So that's why they transferred some of the tribes. Of course, you had other exceptions, and by and large, there might have been other Africans, but over 90% of the slaves that came to the Western Hemisphere were of the 12 tribes of Israel, fulfilling the prophecies. So now we look at that period, and of course, we can see at the top is Adam and Eve, and we can see that's the beginning. The world has been here about 6,000 years, meaning with human beings. I know they tell you it's been here billions and trillions of years. No people were there. Adam is the recording of the first human being in our time. I don't know about all the other times. There could have been people here back then. You don't know about them. I don't know about them. This is the beginning of this civilization and this world as we know it today. And 4,000 years ago takes us to Adam. But I want you to look at Abraham at 2,000 years after creation, because now we're going to come forward from Abraham's time up to 1 AD and tell you what happened. We went backwards. Now we're going to come from that period to show how we got here, what we did, what and why and how we were enslaved. We begin in the book of Genesis, our timeline of historical events. In Genesis, the 9th chapter, and let's begin reading at verse 18 and 19.
The sons of Noah that went forth from the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and of these was the whole earth overspread.
Look at that last line. These three were the sons of Noah, and of these was the whole earth overspread. Everybody on earth, says everybody on earth, not I, that they came from one of these three sons. The Europeans come from Japheth. The Hamitic seed comes from Africa, Cush, Ethiopia, Mitzrayim, Egypt, Libya, Put, all of them mentioned in the Bible. And of course, we understand and know that by these were all the people, and the whole earth was overspread with migration to the other places. Everything started in the Fertile Crescent and then moved out across the planet. At one time we mentioned it was one continent, and then we had Peleg, and the earth was divided, and so continents came as we know them today. the 7 continents. In Exodus, it tells us another very important historical event. Time won't allow us to deal with all of the periods in detail, but I'm so glad we have groups like DCB, Explain the Torah Well, Shomer Abrit. I listened to many of these others, the Kingdom programs, many teachers. I can't mention them all, out of Philadelphia, all over the United States, Chicago. There are people that have been teaching for years, still do, and they know and understand, putting this information out about our true history. In Exodus, the 13th chapter, verses 17 to 22, this is now Noah's period that we read about. That's about 2,300 years, 2,300, maybe in 50 years approximately, before, as I said, the modern or common era, it says.
And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not by the way of that land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. But God led the people about by the way of the wilderness, by the Red Sea. And the children of Israel went up armed out of the land of Egypt. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straightly sworn the children of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you, and he shall carry up my bones away hence with you.
And of course we did leave out of there, and we then were allowed to live in the wilderness for 40 years, and we all know it was a terrible time in the wilderness. We were disobedient unto the Creator. In Genesis, there's so much history that took place. Jacob, we sold our brother Joseph down into Egypt, and then later we end up following due to the famine that took place. We know that history, and we know also then Joseph brought the family down because Yah used him through his dreams to bring us into Egypt land where he sustained us. And of course, all of that generation died. And Joseph said, when you go up, take my bones out of here with you. And we did all of that. And so we were in the wilderness, and now we're down to a period, as we know, probably coming into 1400s. We're in 450 years because we were 40 years in the wilderness. So in Deuteronomy, you got to know we're in a different time of space, because the history in the Bible is a calendar. I'm showing you that this is a calendar. This is the early calendar of mankind. The calendar we call the Hebrew calendar is based on this historical timeline that I'm showing you right now. We're coming forward to our present day to find out what happened. We went far back, 2,300 something odd years before the common era, this modern era that we're living in. Now we're at Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and we're going to see again, let's take Deuteronomy 10 to show how we were admonished. We were warned not to behave this way. We were terrible, disobedient, stiff-necked, the Most High calls. You are evil, stiff-necked, and rebellious people. Now, I asked you, if the cap fit, let's wear it. I'm saying I got my cap on. I'm guilty. Are you guilty? Are we guilty as a people of doing evil before the Creator, Elohim? You might see God in the book. Don't get caught up in thinking we're talking about anyone other than the Creator and maker of heaven and earth. Every time we speak, that's who we're speaking about. He goes on to tell us the warning.
Deuteronomy 10:12. And now, Israel, what doth Jehovah thy God require of thee, but to fear Jehovah thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Jehovah thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep for thy good the commandments of Jehovah and his statutes which I command thee this day. Behold, unto Jehovah thy God belongeth the heaven, and the heaven of heavens, the earth with all that therein is. Only Jehovah had the delight in thy fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all peoples.
In other words, that's why we were chosen. He chose us because he chose our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their seed after them. Every black person that came into that Atlantic slave trade, it's speaking to you.
As it is this day, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart, and be no more stiff-necked. For Jehovah your God, he is the God of gods, and the Lord of lords, the great power, the mighty, and the awful, who regardeth not persons, nor taketh reward.
How could it be made any clearer than that? That Yah is the one who's the power of all powers. If you make a God, if you choose a man and you want to worship him, you have that right. But the Creator is the power over all the forces and energies in the entire universe.
He doth execute justice for the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger in giving him food and raiment.
He's not a respecter of persons. If you're a stranger, that's why our program is for the Israelites in particular, but humanity as a whole. He loves all of his creation.
Love ye therefore the stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt.
This is an ideal situation. Granted, it didn't happen, but that's where we're trying to go as a humanity, to bring back that love. Among ourselves first, we must do it, and then, as Malcolm said, how can we love others when we can't love ourselves? How can we unite with others when we cannot unite with ourselves? Thou shalt fear, it says.
Jehovah thy God, him shalt thou serve, and him shalt thou cleave. And by his name shalt thou swear.
He is your glory, black man. Israel, he is the power. That's why our glory is gone, because as Abba Ben-Ami said, only until we do his laws will his glory return unto us. And we want to have his glory, we have to live a righteous lifestyle.
He is thy glory, he is thy God, that hath done for thee these great and tremendous things.
Just merciful. Just alone, that's great enough. The fact that we survived everything that happened to us, that's enough to thank the Almighty for in itself. Not to mention all the things that he does for every one of us every day individually.
Which thine eyes have seen. Thy fathers went down into Egypt with 70 persons. And now Jehovah thy God hath made thee as the stars of heaven for multitude.
Going back to the fact that Yaakov, Jacob, took 70 of his sons and daughters and his children and grandchildren into Egypt, confirming that history that I spoke about earlier in the timeline of Egypt. And I was going into there with Joseph. And now we can see we were warned and we were told what was required of us. Have we done it? No, that's why we went into slavery. Let's look at Deuteronomy again and read the next precept in 63 and 64.
And it shall come to pass that as Jehovah rejoice over you to do you good and to multiply you, so Jehovah will rejoice over you to cause you to perish and to destroy you. And he shall be plucked off the land whither thou goest in to possess it. And Jehovah shall scatter thee among all peoples, from the one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, even wood and stone.
Even those things we wear around our neck is gods. That's what he's talking about. Religion. You're going to become a religious person rather than a spiritual man or woman with the spirit of Yah. In Deuteronomy 28, he tells you about the yoke. No other people have had a yoke around their necks, arms, and ankles like we have. This is you, so-called black man. Deuteronomy 28, 47 and 48.
Because thou didst not serve Jehovah thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, by reason of the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemy whom Jehovah shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed you.
And you have to remember, we came here naked, in chains, and yokes around our necks. Does the shoe fit? It doesn't fit other people. You could do a process of elimination. That didn't happen to everyone. If it happened to everyone, it would not have been a curse. This was placed on this black man. They've been telling you all about the science of the COVID-19, the medical science of the COVID-19. No one is speaking about spirituality. This is the hand of the Creator. They can't speak in spiritual understanding. And nor can they speak and conclude spiritual matters in what happened to us. That's why I told you, you have to take into consideration other factors other than blood. This is a word spoken against us in every Bible. And we have to understand that has been fulfilled through prophecy. We look at, again, Deuteronomy 28, 49, and 50. Does the shoe fit? Again, lives, Jehovah said, black lives, young and old, won't matter. You've made me so angry, I'm gonna have everyone do anything they want to you.
Yehovah will bring a nation against me from far, from the end of the earth, as the vulture swoopeth down.
This vulture is the eagle. The eagle is a vulture bird. Maybe that's who he was talking about. Surely it came to pass.
A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
We didn't know English when we got to America. We didn't know Portuguese. We didn't know that in Brazil. We didn't know French, and we didn't know all these languages where we had to learn them into captivity.
A nation of fierce countenance.
That hated us, racist attitudes towards us, discriminating at every opportunity.
That shall not regard the person of the old.
Black lives won't matter. I don't care if you're young or old.
Nor show favor to the young.
This is the hand of the Creator, and man is just carrying out his will. And the nation did their part to us, just as it was decreed by our Creator. In Deuteronomy 28, 36, and 37, he tells you would serve other gods. And we know all of this. Let's look at Ezekiel, prophetic word. Now at the end of Deuteronomy, we're at the 1400s on the timeline of history, 1400 before the common or the Christian era. And so again, we must know and understand this. Ezekiel 39, 22 to 29 says, we will have that yoke broken one day. That's why you and I are free. Thank the Creator for his mercy, and he's remembered the prophecy to free us.
So the house of Israel shall know that I am Jehovah their God, from that day and forward. And the nation shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they broke faith with me, and I hid my face from them. So I gave them into the hand of their adversaries, and they fell all of them by the sword. According to their uncleanness, and according to their transgressions, did I unto them, and I hid my face from them. Therefore, thus saith Jehovah Elohim, now will I bring back the captivity of Jacob, and have compassion upon the whole house of Israel. I will be jealous for my name, my holy name, and they shall bear their sin, and all their breach of faith, which they have committed against me, when they shall dwell safely in their land, and none shall make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the peoples, and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, they shall know that I am Jehovah their God, in that I cause them to go into captivity among the nations, and have gathered them unto their own land, and I will leave none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, saith Jehovah Elohim.
Yeah, he didn't pour out any signs on us. He poured out his spirit, his ruach, upon us, give us a spirit of awakening once again. We come into the period, of course, 1400s BCE, and that we call the middle period, where Moses now and Joshua is taking us to the Holy Land. And so in the book of Joshua, you find one prevailing idea is that we had many wars. We had to fight the Canaanites to take the land. And that's what Joshua, he lived to be 110 years old when he died, and he fought all his life to secure him and Caleb, the only survivors from those wilderness days and from the time we left Egypt land. In the book of Judges, it gives you an idea of what we were like. Judges 2:11 says the following.
And the children of Israel did that which was evil in the sight of Yehovah, and served the Baalim.
And served those false gods. It says again, the children of Israel did that which was evil in verse 11, in the sight of the Creator, and served the Baalim, served those idol gods, and that's what made him angry. We forsook him. We did not obey the instructions. That's what happened. Judges 4, you can go all through Judges and through Samuel. It was the same situation, a disobedient people.
Verse 1, and the children of Israel again did that which was evil in the sight of Yehovah when Ehud was dead.
We're guilty. How long are we going to remain guilty? The psalmist asked that. How long, O Yehovah, will thou be angry forever? How long will we not listen and obey? Because I'm telling you, we're suffering, and it's not because of no science. It's not because of nothing else but disobedience to the Almighty. And every Bible tells you, and this is the conspiracy, no one wants you to find out. Because if you do, as his chosen people, you'll be lifted above all the people on the earth. And they'll have to abide by the laws of the Creator. Their constitutions, the Creator said in one place, if they don't come up before me from Shabbat to Shabbat and new moon to new moon, they will not get any rain in their lands and their seasons. There's a future for mankind. And it's not the new world order that the nations are planning. It's going to be the order that the Creator gave it the prophecies. So let's look at, again, another prophecy in Samuel 3, 19 and 20, it says.
And Samuel grew, and Jehovah was with him, and did let none of his word fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of Jehovah.
In 1150, approximately 1,150 years before the Common Era, here we've moved down. We've noticed that the numbers are getting low. We're at the 1100s because it's going to go down to the 900s, the 800s, the 700s before the Christian era, the Common Era. And that's why we have to know this is what we don't know about what happened to us. Samuel, again, tells us again that he was a prophet before Jehovah and 1,150 years before the Christian era. Now we come down to how we lost our national sovereignty. We were a free people. But before we go there, let's listen to one of our songs, and then we'll come back to this historical period when we were a kingdom and then we lost the kingdom.
Let's get Jacob children all over the world. Jacob, you set the way all over the world. Let's get Jacob children all over the world. Let's get Jacob children all over the world. Let's get Jacob children.
Yes, Jacob, you better wake up. Black man, you are Jacob. Me and the Jacobites, Yaakov was our father's name in Hebrew, and it was changed to Yisrael. They say Israel today, but we're talking to you. You got to wake up and understand your true purpose and your identity. We go now to the national period, and we're now in the period of approximately 1,000 years before the Christian era. This is the time of King David, and prior to that, 900 was Saul. And so we are going to now continue with 1 Kings 6:1, where we find out they even give us a time since they've been out of Egypt.
And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel,
in the month of Ziv,
which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Jehovah.
And we still use the Hebrew months today. We know that from this and other places in the Torah, the names of the months. There are few that we had to change because they were the names of Babylonian gods. And we now have even decided in some of our groups to put, again, a number of the month rather than make the mention of the names of other deities, which is against Israelite culture. Let's look at Ezekiel and note that when we're in Ezekiel, you're about 595 years to 575 years before the Common Era. It says, Ezekiel 36, 1 to 12. Let thee look and see and understand this. There's prophecy about how they would take our land, who were the conspirators to even take our land in their own possession. And so the Creator had Kesquiyahu, which is the Hebrew name for Ezekiel. He spoke to the mountains of Israel and prophesied. Why would he prophesy to the mountains and to the hills? Because they're enduring. They would hear the message, and even though we didn't listen, the earth and the creation knows what happened. And so he told them these words.
And thou, son of man, prophesy unto the mountains of Israel, and say, Ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah Elohim, because the enemy has said against you, Aha, even the ancient high places are ours in possession. Therefore prophesy and say, Thus saith Jehovah, even because he have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that he might be a possession unto the rest of the nations, and ye are taken up in the lips of talkers and the evil report of the people.
Just like it is today, everybody talks about us in a very derogatory manner, and we are called everything but a child of Yah. He says they're doing all of that. They got your land, they're talking about you like dogs and treating you like worse than animals. And he says, therefore,
ye mountains of Israel, hear the word of Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah to the mountains and to the hills, to the streams and to the valleys, to the desolate wastes and to the cities that are forsaken.
Meaning the cities that we once lived in, but now they're empty because we're in captive lands.
Which are become a prey and derision to the residue of the nations that are round about. Therefore, thus saith Jehovah, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the nations, and against all Edom, that have appointed my land unto themselves for a possession, with the joy of all their heart, with disdain of soul, to cast it out for a prey. Therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel, and say unto the mountains and to the hills, to the streams and to the valleys, Thus saith Jehovah, behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because you have borne the shame of the nations.
The shame of being called Negroes and coloreds and living according to their days and observing their false observances, Christmas and Halloween. Imagine how we dress up on Halloween. The Creator is saying, you've borne the shame of the nations. You're a holy people and you've been doing unholy things. You are supposed to be devoted to me, and you're devoted to their gods. Therefore,
thus saith Jehovah, I have lifted up my hand. Surely the nations that are round about you, they shall bear their shame.
They're going to pay for what they did to you.
But ye, O mountains of Israel, he shall shoot forth your branches and yield your fruit in my people, to my people Israel. For they are at hand to come.
We're coming home, the prophecy says, and some of us are already there. Just look in Dimona, Israel. Just look in Arad. Just look in Hebron. Just look in Jerusalem. We're there already. Not only The Mona community are those that came in under the late Abba Ben Ami and Elder Bowie. But look at the Beta Yisrael that came with the thousands that came called Falasha. They were coming from all, there are single families and individuals that have moved to Israel understanding that they are Israel. They're not a part of the kingdom. They're not a part of the Falasha community. This awakening is happening all over the earth. And more of us are becoming conscious. Even in the churches, the leaders are saying to the congregants, we are Israelites and we are the people of the Bible that you're reading about. A great awakening is happening as I speak to you.
For behold, I am for you, and I will turn unto you, and ye shall be tilled and
The
sown.
land of Israel is going to be sown by you. I'm bringing and multiplying my people back on their land.
And I will multiply men upon you, all the houses of Israel.
Will means the future. It's already, the future's here, and it's still rolling out the prophecy and fulfillment.
Even all of it. And the cities shall be inhabited, and the waste places shall be builded. And I will multiply upon you man and beast, and they shall increase and be fruitful. And I will cause you to be inhabited after your former state, and will do better unto you than at your beginnings. And ye shall know that I am Jehovah. Yea, I will cause men to walk upon you, even my people Israel, and they shall possess thee, and thou shalt be their inheritance, and thou shalt no more henceforth bereave them of children.
In other words, you're going to have a blessed and favored Yah when you get back into the land of Israel. And that took place, as we said, approximately 595 BCE, before the Common Era. We come down to the 300s, and again, we're looking at approximately 387 BCE, where Malachi in the 3rd chapter, verse 7 and 9, prophesied these words.
From the days of your fathers ye have turned aside from mine ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith Jehovah of hosts. But ye say, wherein shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet ye rob me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and heave offerings. Ye are cursed with the curse, yet ye rob me, even this whole nation.
In other words, he's saying, even though we have this punishment upon us, we're still doing evil in his sight. He just referred to tithes in those days, but we have to know what he's talking about is that we are punished and we're still doing evil, even in the captive lands. We haven't changed our ways, and we're still serving false gods. We won't return unto him, and so he has not returned unto us. We approximately now, we're talking about in the book of Hosea, with the Sumerian captivity. It took place in the 700 BCE, before the captivity of Judah in 595 BCE. Let's look in the book of Hosea. That speaks about Samaria, and that's what it's all about. They were already in captivity. Even though it may appear later in the books, you'd have to know the chronological timeline to know that this is Samaria in the 14th chapter, verses 2 and through 6.
Return, O Israel, unto Jehovah thy God, for thou hast stumbled in thine iniquity. Take with you words, and return unto Jehovah. Say unto him, forgive all iniquity, and accept that which is good. So will we render for bullocks the offerings of our lips. Assure shall not save us. We will not ride upon horses, neither will we call any more the work of our hands our gods. For in thee the fatherless findeth mercy. I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely, for mine anger is turned away from him. I will be as a Jew unto Israel. He shall blossom as a lily, and cast forth his roots as Lebanon.
That's a beautiful future to think about. When you know what we're going through as a people, we need to put our trust in the Most High. Let's listen again to a nice selection of music as we again go through our final precepts. Beautiful people just sleeping need to wake up.
Hey.
is for the holy, the high and the holy, who are at the task so high, always faithful and true. This one is for you, whose purpose to evolve this earth into one great light of truth. For in your high understanding you see so many people deceived. So thankful you take the time out to guide us. Please stay beside us so that we may be in glory as the holy. Yes. This song is for the holy, the high and the holy, for your precious love. Here's a humble melody. This one is for you, who rejoice with us and cry with us and may need comfort too. For in your high understanding you see so many people deceived. So thankful you take the time out to guide us. Please stay beside us so that we may be in glory as the holy. Holy, 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 the holy. So holy. Holy, 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 the holy. Caught up in the rapture of the holy. Caught up in the rapture. Caught up in the rapture. Caught up in the rapture. So holy. Holy, 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 holy. Holy, 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 the holy. For in your high understanding you see so many people deceived. So thankful you take the time out to guide us. Please, please stay beside us so that we may be in glory as the holy. In glory as the holy. Caught up in the rapture of the holy. In glory as the holy. Caught up in the rapture as the holy, 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 the holy. Hey, hey, this one's for you.
Just impossible to put up all the names of those who have set themselves aside and made an impact and influence among our people and on the planet Earth. Many of you sitting out there listening to that, you didn't see it, but your name was up there because you are one of those special people that's striving to be a light unto the nations. May Yah bless you all. We have, again, this thought and idea of a timeline, and we want to go to now Ezekiel 37, verses 1 to 14, to see and understand further about the awakening, because we are called dry bones. You've heard that depiction of us many times, especially those who go to church, but it is pertaining to the black man. And let's look at Ezekiel 37, 1 to 14 quickly.
The hand of Yahweh was upon me, and Yahweh carried me out in a spirit, and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was full of bones. And he caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Yahweh, thou knowest. Then he said unto me, Prophesy over these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of Yahweh. Thus saith Yahweh unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and he shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you. I will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and he shall live, and he shall know that I am Yahweh. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a commotion, and the bones came together, bone to its bone. And I beheld, and lo, there were sinews upon them, and flesh came up, and skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then he said unto me, Prophesy unto the breath. Prophesy, son of man, and say to the breath, Thus saith Jehovah, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe unto these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great host. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, Our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are clean cut off. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith Jehovah, Behold, I will open your graves, and cause you to come out of your graves, O my people.
And I know some of you thinking out of the graves of the ground, but he's talking about the death in your mind, that you're going to come out of the graves of your mind, because we're dead from the neck up.
And I will bring you into the land of Israel, and ye shall know that I am Jehovah, when I have opened your graves, and caused you to come up out of your graves, O my people.
And many of us are dead, and we're in lands and we're in places where we have to be brought up and come back to the Most High. We're so low that he says, I'm going to lift you up. Out of all the places where you've been oppressed, have no hope, I will save you.
And I will put my spirit in you.
Notice spirit all the time. His spirit, he was taken up in the spirit. And now the Creator's putting his spirit, and that's what we're praying will happen to you as you listen to these programs and others like it, that you will awaken and get a new spirit of truth, of understanding.
And ye shall live, and I will place you in your own land.
You're going back home one day, and that's why many places where we are falling today, you better understand and know all the places where he has scattered us, the Bible says he's going to destroy them.
And ye shall know that I, Jehovah, have spoken and performed it, saith Jehovah.
In other words, he said it, and he says, I'm going to do it to prove to you that what I say will come to pass. We must understand the Bible. And I want to say this, we're at now the period of 520 or so, and the Common Era, before the Common Era, when we talk about the book of Esther, Zechariah, Zephaniah, we have to know that we are approaching the end of biblical history. And so I want you to know that what takes place after this, the Maccabean history. That's why you have to go to the Apocrypha to fill in that gap. And then you'll find out things happen. Many people think we're Kemet. We're not Egyptians. The Egyptians' history ended with the invasion of the Romans and Ptolemy, Cleopatra in 175 and beyond, coming into modern times, the Egyptians were ruled by Europeans. In fact, today it's called the United Arab Republic because I was there and the Arabs are in the land, not the original the original Egyptians who are now in the Sudan and other parts of Africa. They never went into captivity. Kemet, we're not Kemet. We're not even Ismail Arabs. You could be a Muslim, practice the religion, but you can't be an Arab. Malcolm found that out when he made the trip to Mecca. He respected religion. I do as well, but I'm not an Arab. I respect the fact they worship the creator and maker of heaven and earth, and they're my cousins. They're Hagar's children, my father Abraham's other wife, Hagar. You have to know this not as religion. This is truth. This is the history of who we are and the genealogy that we should know and understand. We are not Kemet. Again, may the Most High bless us to understand. Let's hear from Jeremiah, again, 33. He promised us, you're going to be here forever. 14th verse through, again, the 20th verse. Jeremiah 33.
Behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, that I will perform that good word which I have spoken concerning the house of Israel and concerning the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, will I cause a shoot of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In those days shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name whereby he shall be called. Yehovah is our righteousness.
In Hebrew, that would be called Yehovah Zidikweinu.
But thus saith Jehovah, there shall not be cut off unto David a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel.
There will always be forever a man to be the king of Israel, to take David's seat, he says.
Neither shall there be cut off unto the priests, the Levites, a man before me to offer burnt offerings and to burn meal offerings and to do sacrifice continually.
Meaning that's going to happen in the future again, and there will be Levites from the tribe of Levi that perform those purposes and duties that they were given from ancient times as a perpetual priesthood.
And the word of Jehovah came unto Jeremiah, saying,
Jeremiah, the prophet, his name was not Jeremiah. In the correct understanding, it's Jeremiah, and that's what we're going to be called and how we use the names. We don't call ourselves by those English names when we have the knowledge of our language and we're acquiring it through a redemptive process. This return, slowly but surely, is taking effect.
Thus saith Jehovah, if he can break my covenant with the day, and my covenant with the night.
In other words, if you can stop night and day from coming in this order, and you make, again, this ordinance, this judgment, this ruling of how night and day proceeds, change it up, and then I'll cut off the seed of Israel.
So that there shall not be day and night in their season.
In other words, let's make it night all the time for 24 hours, day for 2 weeks. He said, if you can do that, then he'll do the following.
Then may also my covenant be broken with David my servant, that he should not have a son to reign over his throne.
In other words, then there will be no son for David to be on the throne. In addition, there'll be no Levites that will do their duties either.
And when the Levites the priests, my ministers.
So again, we use the Bible to let you know that we have a truth-centered teaching. We verify. Truth is verifiable. This can be substantiated. We're doing that. And so again, this is not religion. This is truth. We close out coming down the timeline because I told you all of this ends out bringing us into Maccabean history. And Maccabean history tells you about the Greek and Roman invasions into Syria. And we mentioned the sons or the generals of Alexander that received those territories. It was again the Asian Peninsula. And we know the Greek Isles. We know that Egypt was given to Ptolemy, and we know that, again, the Seleucid families, they received Syria. It's all in the history books. Not me say so, it's them say so. Know their history, know it, study it, and you can throw back their information on them. There's no other book to go to. There's no other timeline. This is the timeline that leads you into ancient history, and it's all in your Bible called the Old Testament, the Holy Scriptures. Again, let's listen to Zechariah as we begin to close out. Zechariah 4:6-8, and then Zephaniah 2:1-3, and we'll listen to a beautiful song again.
Then he answered and spoke unto me, saying, This is the word of Yahuwah unto Zerubbabel, saying,
This was the governor in the time of the Babylonian Empire, and where we were sent back. You know, Darius and Cyrus sent us back to the land. Zerubbabel was one of those men with many others. He was the governor, and we had Joshua the high priest. They were restoring our order back then. Of course, we broke faith with Yah again, and ultimately we ended up in the Western Hemisphere.
not by might, nor by power.
You're not going to fight. It's not going to be in this restoration by how much money you have in your power or how many celebrities you have. We don't need any of that. We need the Creator. And we hope that every one of us will be a part of this return and understand the difference between the Creator and the creature gods. But he says, by my spirit. Read it again from where it says, not by might.
Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith Yahuwah.
That's how we coming out of this, by his spirit. And we end up, we'll have that last precept after another song. And this is the daughter of Cohane Levi ben Israel. Bishop Quetya singing, What's My Name? Cohane Levi wrote the song. And I want you to know Hashaba Israel Quolot wrote the song, Jacob's Children. Last week we tried to play it, but our equipment recording it and transferred from a CD. And as you listen to it, it was a very old recording in the 70s. That was the original version of the one we played last week. We recorded it again in Guyana with the steel band. Our brother Uman Ben Levi had a steel band and we put it all together. But this is Bishop Quetya, beautiful song written by Cohane Levi, sung by his daughter. What's my name? Who are we?
I'm singing What's My Name?
Roam this whole world over, been immersed in sin and shame. No man's feet I've not been under. What's my name? I've been chained, whipped and beaten. Is my only faith. Even my soul, the nations wondered. What's my name? What's my name? Who could care? For none doth stand with me. I alone
He'll tear my bonds asunder. Then you'll hear when I proclaim. Then you'll hear when I proclaim. Yes,
I hope that's you all clapping at home, because you need to give her a round of applause and a high acknowledgement for that beautiful song, and so all the others. In Deuteronomy 29:9, we hear these words.
Isaiah 29:9.
Yes, Isaiah 29:9.
Stupefy yourselves and be stupid.
This all happened to us.
Blind yourselves and be blind.
We are blind mentally and spiritually.
Ye that are drunken, but not with wine.
We are drunk as a people, but not from drinking alcohol.
That stagger, but not with strong
That
drink.
don't know the way and don't have a balance in their stability in their lives, because Yah has punished us with a spirit of deep sleep.
For Jehovah poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep,
Made us confused because we wouldn't listen.
and had closed your eyes.
Closed our minds so we can't understand our past and what happened. He's removing that veil little by little. It started with some of those leaders that we have indicated earlier.
The prophets and your heads, the seers hath he covered.
For many years, this had happened, and it's all a vision.
And all the vision, and the vision of all this has become unto you as the words of a writing that is sealed.
It's in your Old Testament, in your Bible. That's what's sealed. The things we're speaking about today, before some of these great men, Rabbi Matthews, Cohane, Levi, Rabbi Levi, Rabbi Tate, so many others, this generation couldn't say it without those before us. They studied, passed the knowledge on to us. In the culture, Nasi Yaakov, and so many others. We can't never name all the great ones that have been in our past.
Which men deliver to one that has learned it, saying, read this, I
You
pray.
studied, you went to college. He can't explain it. You could go to college, you could have a doctorate. You can't break down this Bible.
And he said, I cannot,
I
for
can't.
it is sealed.
It's sealed, it's hidden from us.
And the writing is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I am not learned.
I didn't study enough. I can't explain, I don't know, because that's the way it's been. But now we have shown you, hopefully with all the precepts and all the illustrations, that this is now an awakening time. That's why you're in a new time. You can put your watch away, because the Creator's time, prophecy, is what we're living in now. And we close out with what's about to happen to us. I hope you're ready for this with your heart. In Zephaniah, the 2nd chapter, this is where all of us have to arrive in order to be saved.
Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O shameless nation. Before the decree bring forth the day when one passeth as the child, before the fierce anger of Yehovah come upon you, before the days of Yehovah's anger come upon you, seek ye Yehovah, all ye humble of the earth, that have executed his ordinance. Seek righteousness, seek humility. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of Yahweh's anger.
You hide you from the pandemic, maybe. Nobody has a guarantee. None of us here in no country, Guyana, Israel, no one has guarantees, but he told you, be humble and execute justice and righteousness. Live by the judgments, by the Torah is what he said. So again, I hope and pray in our closing that you can understand the timeline that we've presented and that you can know and understand that we all started in Northeast Africa. Some of them came down to Tanzania where you have the Bantu who again married into the Arabs studying Islam and they became people who speak Swahili. That's why they speak Swahili. It's a combination of Bantu and Arabic. I want to say this too. I thank Yah for another great brother. I can never remember them all. The man who brought me into the light, Nasi Tavel. Again, he was, as we call it, my angel, my messenger that came to me and had me understand all of these things. And I remember him telling me that Bantu and Arabic was how Swahili became the language. And I went to the library, Schomburg, 138th Street, I believe, in Manhattan, somewhere around there. And again, I looked it up. He was absolutely right. Bantu and Arabic is what brought about Swahili. And sometime maybe in the language I'll show you, they have Araba and different words, right? The same words we have in Hebrew for counting, Shanaim, Shalosh, Araba, Kaimisha, Shisha, Shiva, Shemona, Shemone, you could go man, masculine or feminine, Tisha, and Asar. So again, just knowledge, information. I hope and pray that you've enjoyed our program. More importantly, I hope that you seek righteousness, seek brotherhood and sisterhood, unite Yisrael and all mankind. Hallelujah. Toda for listening. Yivareka Yehovah, Yishmareka. Yair Yehovah Panayo, Aleka Wikuneka. Yisa Yehovah Panayo, Aleka, Wayasem, the Ka, Shalom. Hallelujah.
Upon the children of Israel, and I bless them. Sing
among Israel so Namidia Mishira Wafami ding to among Israel so Namidia Mishira